They're called giving stuff away. All right.
Yeah.
One thing we've done during the pandemic, or at least I've done during the pandemic, is do a lot of book clubs. I'm in, I think, 3 at the moment. And it's been super invigorating to like have people with whom I get to read and kind of push me in new reading directions. And there's a startup called Bookclub, Natasha, that raised $6 million that you wrote about today, I think. So tell us what's going on and why does a book club need money?
Yeah. Well, actually, let me first ask you guys a question. What are the favorite, I know both of you are crazy readers. What is kind of your favorite use case of a book club? Like, what's the biggest benefit of doing a book club, if at all, in your heads? Danny, you start. I'm really curious.
I think book clubs exist to remind you that there's way too much to read and you should never read with other people. Because
Do you
every time I
enjoy
ever
the
go to
discussion at all?
First of all, I've never had a book club successfully come together with more than 3 people in which everyone's actually read the book and has actually thought about what the book means.
Dude, you need to
Book
get some
clubs
new
always fail
friends.
because of the marginal. I try to upgrade, but at the same time, like the reality is, there's just so much content. There's so many books. There's
Yeah.
so many things to do. You read one book, and guess what? Everyone else read something else because they got distracted or whatever, and it's very hard to centralize everyone on one topic. But Alex, what about your experience?
Much more positive than yours. I mean, for example, one thing that I like about book clubs is that they have a way of dragging me in new directions. And so I'm in a book club with actually a bunch of people from my area, of whom I'm the only man. And so the books that get selected by that group probably aren't the things that I would think of first. And so they've dragged me in new directions. I've read books that I wouldn't otherwise have picked off the shelf, and they've diversified not only my author base, but also just what I've been reading into. And it's been super mentally worth it. So for me, it's the diversification, and also it adds some rigor. So I read a lot of stuff for fun, and it makes me have some other stuff on a more regular cadence. And so I find that to be just useful to make sure I don't fall behind a certain kind of like overall pace of reading.
Yeah. I mean, I'll add my take and then I'll introduce what book club is up to. I am part of one, and we have obviously struggled during the pandemic a little bit. Like, wine and cheese kind of brought us together to talk about books all the time, and we don't do that anymore. But it definitely gave like a second life to a lot of the chapters and books I read when I was reading them. We were reading Educated, which everyone had talked about, and there was so much content out there, but still sitting with people and just breaking down a quote for 20 minutes felt like a very cool version of English class. And so it made me more incentivized to read. But I'll stop talking about book clubs to talk about Book Club, a new startup that just raised $6 million in seed financing to basically create a masterclass-esque experience with authors to engage with our book clubs. So let's say we're reading a book by Jhumpa Lahiri. She can come into our book club. We can request for her to join us, or we can, pull up a video on a question we have that she has already answered and kind of integrated into our book club. It's kind of creating like the way that the co-founder David Blake described it as taking authors from kind of like behind the book to part of your experience.
I've been reading William Dershowitz's The Death of the Artist the last week or two, which came out in July. And one of the things he really emphasized in the writing section of the art book is that book tours were not a thing until the 90s. And today, an author on average will do something like 90 to 100 in-person engagements to sell their book as part of a kind of a big, any kind of large publisher book tour. And so to me, what's interesting here is the ability to actually scale. The book tour is not very scalable. It's actually miserable. Almost all authors will complain bitterly about the book tour. And in fact, Zoom has been one of the best things that's ever happened to the book tour because you can stay at home and actually do writing and do the work of an author as opposed to moving in your jalopy from Holiday Inn to Holiday Inn Express across the great United States. And so I actually think there's a huge opportunity to bring in the way that Masterclass brought high quality production values, consistency, and sort of an aspirational tone to books, right? So even something like The Odyssey, I have Emily Watson's copy, hopefully coming up. That's another one of those book clubs that's like 5 years ago that never actually happened. But I could imagine if she came on to book club and had a 2-hour engagement with high quality production values. It's a way to like bring out the quality of the work that you're reading. And to me, that's really exciting. Now, how that makes money and whether it should have $6 million of seed funding, that's an interesting question, given that I feel like there's so many book-focused platforms that have tried to get built over the last couple of years that have just not been successful. Everything from Goodreads, which sort of got miserably bought by Amazon, has never really been improved since, and onward. So it'll be interesting to see how they perform.
I can see the market for it though, because
I can see the
often,
market, yeah.
yeah, like if I want to get N.K. Jemisin to show up, I presume it's gonna be very, very hard because she's a freaking superstar. But like, there are authors that I read who are smaller, whose books probably sell less, and I would definitely pay. Just thinking like out loud about money, which is always a little weird, but like if we read a book for book club and I could bring an author for like $200 for like half an hour, and then have them like talk to us about the book and like answer our questions, I think I would definitely do that a couple times a year, just because I love that kind of like being able to talk to the source material person. So, I can see a lot of demand for this. The margins could be okay for book club itself. I just wonder how many nerds out there are like me, I guess.
Well, I was talking to him, and he was saying, the co-founder, and he was saying that a lot of their success will depend on getting those big aspirational names on the platform first, similar to Masterclass having Serena Williams or what's his face, the crazy cook.
Oh, Shouty Man.
Shouty Man was problematic. So
Shouty Man, bad hair, terrible television. Danny, you're the pop culture expert.
Gordon Ramsay.
Gordon Ramsay.
Gordon Ramsay.
I'm so glad we don't remember him.
Contribution right there.
But yeah, so that success will be related to that, and they're going to do something similar to Masterclass again, with they charge a subscription fee. So it'll definitely be for like bookworms versus people who kind of have the one-off experience.
I would like to point out that everyone in the audience now knows we have good taste, because no one actually knew who Gordon Ramsay was.
Except I can name a lot more authors.
Guy
than Fieri
also exists, but thankfully we don't know about that. The subscription will be interesting, right? So I think the question, this is what always I think harms a lot of book clubs is it's the continuation, right? It's easy to do monthly or maybe quarterly. It's hard to keep people engaged over a long period of time because of work and everything. So maybe the right structure, keeping people up to date so that they know, gee, the author's going to be here. I'm going to be embarrassed if I don't read this book. I want to ask something completely stupid. So maybe that'll be a great accountability mechanism.
And finally, if you said if you subscribe to this, you can talk to John Scalzi or watch John Scalzi talk about his books every couple of months. I would, I read all the stuff that he writes lately. So to me, I'm a fan of him as I am of like a band. It's like that. This hits me in all the right spots.
I'm going to end with one last thing that I think people should start looking at is I've been hearing I heard talk to 2 pre-seed early stage founders in edtech this week. There's definitely the version with Class for Zoom that is we are Zoom, but better. And then there's the version of Book Club that's actually, we don't want to be anywhere near Zoom. And so I think we're seeing the divide of edtech that's we're going to live on top of Zoom and just admit it. And we're going to see the version of edtech that's we're going to compete with what you think you deserve versus what you actually deserve.
I mean, all that sounds great because it gives us options, and options are good as a consumer. I love competition. I love seeing people try out new